Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God, back with you with the next video in my series reading The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Without further ado, returning to The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn as read by Lord Naren White. Look at it, gentlemen, and ladies all, take a hold of it, shake it. There's a hand that was the hand of a hog, but it ain't so no more. It's the hand of a man that's started in on a new life, and he'll die before he'll go back. You mark them words, don't forget I said them. It's a clean hand now, shake it, don't be afeard. So they shook it, one after the other, all around and cried. The judge's wife kissed it. Then the old man, he signed a pledge, made his mark. The judge said it was the holiest time on record or something like that. Then they tucked the old man into a beautiful room, which was the spare room, and in the night sometime he got powerful thirsty and clumb onto the porch roof and slid down a stanchion and traded his new coat for a jug of 40 rod, and clumb back again and had a good time. And towards daylight he crawled out again, drunk as a fiddler, and rolled off the porch and broke his left arm in 2 places, and was most froze to death when somebody found him after sunup. And when they come to look at the spare room, they had to take soundings before they could navigate it. The judge, he felt kind of sore. He said he reckoned a body could reform the old man with a shotgun, maybe, but he didn't know no other way. Chapter 6. Well, pretty soon the old man was up and around again, and then he went for Judge Thatcher in the courts to make him give up that money, and he went for me too for not stopping school. He catched me a couple of times and thrashed me, but I went to school just the same, and dodged him or outrun him most of the time. I didn't want to go to school much before, but I reckoned I'd go now to spite Pap. That law trial was a slow business. Appeared like they weren't even going to get started on it. So every now and then I'd borrow $2 or $3 off of the judge for him to keep from getting a cowhiding. Every time he got money, he got drunk, and every time he got drunk, he raised Cain around town, and every time he raised Cain, he got jailed. He was just suited. This kind of thing was right in his line. He's got to hanging around the widows too much, so he told him at last if he didn't quit using around there would make trouble for him. Well, wasn't he mad? He said he would show who was Huck Finn's boss, so he watched out for me one day in the spring and catched me, and took me up the river about 3 mile in a skiff, and crossed over to the Illinois shore where it was woody, and there warn't no houses but an old log hut in a place where the timber was so thick you couldn't find it if you didn't know where it was. He kept me with him all the time, and I never got a chance to run off. We lived in that old cabin, and he always locked the door and put the key under his head nights. He had a gun which he stole, I reckon, and we fished and hunted, and that was what we lived on. Every little while he locked me in and went down to the store, 3 miles to the ferry, and traded fish and game for whiskey, and fetched it home and got drunk and had a good time and licked me. The widow, she found out where I was by and by, and she sent a man over to try and to get hold of me, but Pap drove him off with the gun, and it weren't long after till I was used to being parked where I was, and liked it all but the cowhide part. It was kind of lazy and jolly, laying off comfortable all day, smoking and fishing, no books nor study. 2 months or more run along, and my clothes got to be all rags and dirt. And I didn't see how I'd ever got to like it so well at the widow's, where you had to wash and eat on a plate and comb up, and go to bed and get up regular and be forever bothering over a book, and have old Miss Watson pecking at you all the time. I didn't want to go back no more. I'd stopped cussin', because the widow didn't like it. But now I took it to it again because Pap had no objections. It was pretty good times up in the woods there, take it all around. But by and by Pap got too handy with his hickory, and I couldn't stand it. I was all over welts. He got to going away so much, too, and locking me in. Once he locked me in and was gone 3 days. It was dreadful lonesome. I judged he had got drowned, and I wasn't ever going to get out any more. I was scared. I made up my mind I would fix up some way to leave there, and had tried to get out of that cabin for many a time, but I couldn't find no way. There weren't a window to it big enough for a dog to get through it. I couldn't get the chimbley, it was too narrow. The door was thick, solid oak slabs. Pap was pretty careful not to leave a knife or anything in the cabin when he was away. I reckon I'd hunted the place over as much as 100 times. Well, I was most all the time at it, because it was about the only way to put in the time. But this time I found something at last. I found an old rusty wood saw without any handle. It was laid in between a rafter and the clapboards of the roof. I greased it and went to work. There was an old horse blanket nailed against the logs, at the far end of the cabin behind the table, to keep the wind from blowing through the chinks and putting the candle out. I got under the table and raised the blanket and went to work to saw a section of the big bottom log out, big enough to let me through. Well, it was a good long job, but I was getting towards the end of it, when I heard Pap's gun in the woods. I got rid of the signs of my work and dropped the blanket and hid my saw, and pretty soon Pap come in. Pap warn't in good humor, so he was his natural self. He said he was downtown and everything was going wrong. His lawyer said he reckoned he would win his lawsuit and get the money if they ever got started on the trial. But then there was ways to put it off a long time, and Judge Thatcher knowed how to do it. And he said people allowed there'd be another trial to get me away from him, and give me to the widow for my guardian. And they guessed it would win this time. This shook me up considerable, because I didn't want to go back to the widow's any more, and be so cramped up and civilized, as they called it. Then the old man got to cussing, and cussed everything and everybody he could think of, and then cussed them all over again to make sure he hadn't skipped any. And after that he polished off with a kind of general cuss all around, including a considerable parcel of people which he didn't know the names of, and so called them what's his name when he got to them, and went right along with his cussing. He said he would like to see the widow get me. He said he would watch out, and if they tried to come any such game on him, he knowed a place of 6 or 7 mile off to stow me in, where they might hunt till they dropped and they couldn't find me. That made me pretty uneasy again, but only for a minute. I reckoned I wouldn't stay on hand till he got that chance. The old man made me go to Skiff and fetch the things he had got. There was a 50-pound sack of cornmeal and a side of bacon ammunition, and a 4-gallon jug of whiskey, and an old book and 2 newspapers for wadding. Besides some tow, I toted up a load and went back and sat down on the bow of the skiff to rest. I thought it all over, and I reckoned I would walk off with the gun and some lines and take to the woods when I run away. I guessed I wouldn't stay in one place, but just tramp right across the country, mostly night times, and hunt and fish to keep alive, and so get so far away that the old man nor the widow couldn't ever find me any more. I judged I would saw out and leave that night if Pap got drunk enough, and I reckoned he would. I got so full of it I didn't notice how long I was staying till the old man hollered and asked me whether I was asleep or drowned. I got the things all up to the cabin, and then it was about dark. While I was cooking supper, the old man took a swig or two, and got sort of warmed up, and went to ripping again. He had been drunk all over in town, and laid in the gutter all night, and he was a sight to look at. A body would have thought he was Adam. He was just all mud. Whenever his liquor began to work, he most always went for the government. His time, he says. Call this a government? Why, just look at it, and see what it's like. Here's the law standing ready to take a man's son away from him, a man's own son, which he has had all the trouble and all the anxiety and all the expense of raising. Yes, just as that man has got that son raised at last and ready to go to work and began to do something for him and give him a rest, the law up and goes for him, and they call that government. That ain't all nother. The law backs that old Judge Thatcher and helps him to keep me out of my property. Here's what the law does. The law takes a man worth $6,000 and upwards and jams him into an old trap of a cabin like this, and lets him go round in clothes that ain't fitting for a hog. We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.